Welcome to the Best Music Podcast, where we see behind the curtain and discover hidden habits and success secrets of noteworthy music makers so you can speed up your journey to your dream music goals by taking what you need from their wins and lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Dan Spencer, and this week's featured guest is Silvan Joray. Silvan Joray is a Swiss jazz guitarist and composer currently based in New York City. He has gained recognition in the jazz community, having won special prizes at several international jazz competitions. He's performed at prestigious jazz festivals and has toured internationally. Joray grew up in a musical family and began his formal training on the classical guitar before discovering jazz and switching to the electric guitar. Starting out, he focused on jazz standards and was influenced by guitarists such as Wes Montgomery. Later, his studies with renowned jazz guitarist Wolfgang Muthspiel at Jazzcampus Basel broadened his musical horizons, inspiring him to compose his own music. Joray's latest album, Updraft, embraces both the openness of European as well as the rootedness and swing of American jazz. His music is characterized by intricate harmonies, melodic sensitivity, and virtuosic improvisation. Joray is currently immersed in the New York City jazz scene and is continually developing his style by experimenting with extended techniques like quarter tones, also called microtones, and tapping, which was popularized by Eddie Van Halen, which are not traditionally associated with jazz guitar playing. You can hear the new album Updraft, that's Updraft, everywhere you listen to music, and find out more at silvanjoray.com. That's SILVANJORAY.com. Silvan, thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy touring and release schedule to come hang out with us for a little bit.
Thank you so much, Dan, for having me. I'm delighted.
So, Silvan, why tapping? What's bringing you to explore these extended techniques?
That's a good question. I don't completely remember how I got into it, but I just saw people like Gilad were doing it a little bit sometimes, in a different way though. And I was just thinking, yeah, it would be cool to like thoroughly learn this technique and make it my own in a way. So I actually bought a course from a metal guitarist. He's called Dan Mum, and I think I'm about like 2/3 into it. And yeah, the last part is still missing. The last part is going to be multi-finger tapping, which I have dived into a little bit just on my own, but I'm playing with nails, so it's kind of hard to combine that with the tapping, because I always have to like make sure to not, you know, like scrape my nail off while doing it. But yeah, I'm gonna explore that more thoroughly as we go on.
So, for those who don't understand how tapping works and playing with nails work, would you explain why you have nails on your right hand that you're using to play, and then how that would interfere with tapping? Obviously, we understand that there's something going on there, but could you just break that down for us?
For sure, yeah. So I'm using that. So I started out on classical guitar, which actually in the beginning I didn't play with nails even on the classical, but then at some point I realized, oh, it just kind of gives you a better grip on the strings and a better sound, like more sound possibilities. And when I switched to the electric, I just, I kept my nails, and I've been playing with nails ever since. It just, it's just a different sound. Like I get a more crispy, pristine sound with the nails, and the goal is to make the sound even between the notes that I play with the pick and the notes that I pluck with the fingers. So that's the goal, to like not make people recognize if it was like a picked note with the pick or a plucked note with the fingers. So it's supposed to sound the same, hopefully.
So
Just
are you
'cause-
using hybrid picking there? So you're actually holding a pick between your index and thumb and then using your middle ring and pinky finger to also pick notes at the same time, correct?
yes, exactly. Yeah, I actually use hybrid picking not only for chords, like playing notes at the same time. I fairly often use it also within my lines, that I would play something with the pick down here, and then when there's a jump to another string, I would use the either the ring finger or the pinky actually. Yeah.
I was going to ask you because I heard a couple small sweeps
Mm.
in in the new record, and for those of you who don't know, it's when you take traditionally take a guitar pick and then you go down through multiple strings at the same time or up through multiple strings at the same time, while simultaneously very dexterously initiating contact on your left hand between just the string that's being played. It's a very delicate technique. So when you're doing sweeps, Sylvan, are you doing sweeps with a pick, with nails, or some combination thereof?
It's probably a combination. I do sweeps with the pick,
Ah,
fairly
cool.
often too. Yeah. When it's wait, let me just maybe demonstrate it
Yeah,
here.
yeah, 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 for sure.
Um, well, I'm not plugged in right now, so I don't know if you can hear anything. So if I would play something like that, where I jump strings, I would use. But then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if I sweep, then I use the actual sweep picking. Yeah.
And for those of you listening on audio, I highly recommend hopping over to YouTube so you can look at the absolute carnival of technical amazingness that was going on in Sylvan's right hand. That was quite a sight to behold. So Sylvan, thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
It's cool. That was wild. So Sylvan, like, were you hearing faster notes and you wanted to use tapping to get that sound to come out, or did you just want to explore a new frontier or something else?
Um, so mostly I was thinking about like wider interval jumps. Yeah, so I mean the fast is one aspect of it, because then you can play like big interval jumps in a fast way, but the effect that I was looking for was the big interval jumps, like was if since I have the guitar here.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that was just random. And then,
Yeah, that's cool. And then you're also doing some sliding with the tapping finger as well. Um,
yes.
I recommend everyone listen to some of Richie Sambora's guitar solos from the '80s on John Bon Jovi, where he does a lot of those sliding things up the neck. It's a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Okay, so Sylvan, I think we've both established that we're both guitar nerds and we love guitar. Now let's talk about some more universal music things. So the desire to find new sounds. Can you talk about that from like an artistic standpoint? Like for you as a composer, for you as a music creator, for you as a musician pure, what drives you to try and find new areas musically?
Um, so I think the first time I got into composing was when I started studying with Wolfgang, as mentioned in the beginning, and he really like pushed me into trying to find my own way of expressing myself, because and then over the years I thought about it more and more, and I just realized that for me it doesn't make sense to like just copy the masters that have been here before. Um, because if anyone wants to listen to that kind of specific style or kind of music, they can just listen to their records. So that's when I realized, okay, I want to try to find some new flavors, and yeah, try to find my own way of expression.
And what for you is the balance between the value of there's so much that can be learned by copying for any musical discipline, where it's songwriting, production, singing, you name it. The act of transcription, so taking a heard musical sound and then either internalizing that to sing it, to put it on an instrument, to write it down. There's tremendous learning value there. How do you balance that out? Like, was there a time where you're more focused on learning and then you learned enough that you're like, yeah, I think I can do without this? Or how did that play out for you?
Yeah, I for sure I did a lot of, I mean, not a lot of transcribing if you compare it to other people who like do this every day for hours, but I did a fair amount of transcribing too, and but I think even if you try to like copy someone one to one, it's never going to be possible because you always naturally have your own way of expressing yourself. So I feel like there was a point where I was trying to sound like Lagerlund. He was one of my big heroes earlier on. But then, yeah, at some point I realized, like, yeah, if I wanted to move to New York, and at the time Lagerlund was living here, like, who wants to call me if I try to sound like a bad copy of the other guy if they can call him because he also lives here. So yeah, but of course I learned a lot through copying other people, and I recommend doing it because that's like the number one way of learning new things. And even I would say, even if I still copy things from time to time from other people, it doesn't inhibit me from doing my own stuff, because the ideal goal is to like get someone's idea and then make it my own. Because that idea with the string skipping, I mean, that's not a new idea. Like, many people are doing it, but then I tried to find a new way. Okay, like, how can I make this my own? And I was like, okay, every time I change, I mean, with the string skipping, you have like sixth, fourth, and sixth, fourth, and second string, and fifth, third, and first, right? So these two pairs, kind of. And then I was like, okay, like every time I switch between those pairs, I want to do it with a double note, like a double fingering, like playing the same note on a different string, which in itself is also not a new idea. I've seen other people doing it many times, like Charles Altura, for example. But then I tried to combine those two ideas and kind of made this my own idea. And yeah, I think that's a good balance to like take some ideas from other people, but then try to find your own application for it.
Could you describe the way you think about creativity? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking. It's because the way you're describing finding a new sound within established structures, and again, this applies to any instrument, any musical discipline, is okay, someone's doing this, but if we Venn diagram these two together, no one's in the middle. And then you find a new space. So could you talk about that type of thinking and how else you use that type of thinking and creativity?
That's a hard question. Okay, let me take another sip here.
He's stalling for time, ladies and gentlemen. He's making sure he can gather his thoughts. If you're on audio, Silvan just took a nice sip of water because I did just pose a very difficult question. So we're playing jazz here today, Silvan. So there's no wrong answers.
Okay. So let's see. Well, I feel like in today's world, so much has been done already, and so much is being done at the moment, like at any moment, all the time. So it's very hard to find something completely new. At least that's what I think. But then still, there's someone coming up and does something new that hasn't been there before. So I guess it's always been difficult, even like 50 years ago. Um, but it's just it's really hard to find something completely new, and it's maybe not really my goal to do that. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's maybe my imagination will grow over time, and I have some ideas with the microtonal stuff um, that might be something new. But then again, like so many people have explored microtonal stuff as well, and it's just I think it's really hard to reinvent the wheel in a way, because yeah, most things have been done already. So, but still, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to mash up two things and finding your own way between that, as long as people dig it and it moves people. And I get a lot of messages at the moment like, "Hey, I really loved your record," and that's why I'm doing it, you know. So I want to move people with my music, and as long as I can do that, I'm happy.
That's incredible. And everyone, the new record is called Updraft. I guess my next question for you would be something along the lines of it seemed to me in some way where you were answering the question, Sylvan, that you said your imagination was going to grow. Are you internally discounting that form of creativity where it's a mashup of two things?
Discounting meaning like talking it down, or
Or valuing it less?
um maybe.
Okay, and if so, why?
um yeah, just as I said, because I mean that there's always some people. I mean, I'm saying like it's like everything's been done, but then there's always this one guy or girl that comes with something new. So I guess it is still possible, um and maybe someday I'll find it.
But didn't you find it? Is what I'm saying. Isn't the act of going through and figuring out where the space is between two things, isn't that in and of itself creating a new? Didn't you, Sylvan, find a new thing? Are you not the guy who created the new thing? Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. Am I?
I think so. And I
Okay.
think I think what we're talking about here is two forms of creativity, right? Like
Yeah.
inspiration creativity versus permutations creativity.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on the difference between those two types of creativity?
Um. Well. Yeah. I mean, I guess I mean, it's both valid forms of creativity, and as I said, like I don't expect myself to find something completely new. So I'm happy with how I'm doing in that process. Because I still want to play jazz. I don't want to like do fusion or anything. I mean, I like fusion, and I'm open to play fusion with other people. But I mean, just talking about my own music, um, that was just an example. I don't want to like do something crazy. I still want to do something that is within the frame of jazz.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, I think I'm happy with the result so far.
So
And I'm just gonna dig deeper and explore these concepts more, because I feel like so far on Updraft it's still kind of subtle the way I use it, especially the quarter tones. It's I mean, I use them sometimes, but
yeah.
not that much actually. And I recently wrote a new piece. You can see it on my Instagram page. Um,
What's your Instagram, Sylvan?
Silvan.Joray. Yeah. So there I wrote a melody with all like quarter tones, and my idea was to like make a melody within like the kind of bebop language, but instead of using half tones,
Huh.
I use quarter tones too. So that's my end goal with this actually.
Huh.
And I feel like on the guitar, I mean, there's David Fiuczynski, for example, who explored like the microtonal guitar with fretless guitars. But I think nobody has been doing playing quarter tones in this way that I'm trying to do it now with the bendings. And like bendings is just a tool. Like I bend the string, but the idea is that no one hears the bend. It's supposed to sound like quarter tones. I don't want to be like dee, dee. I want it to be like da 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 da. Yeah, and I think it's slowly getting there. I'm still practicing it. So and yeah, that's one way of trying to find this new thing within the bigger frame of something that already exists. And yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean it's not less valid, and it's still maybe gonna be something new, like
It
completely
is new.
new in the end. Like
It is new, dude. I'm telling you, man. It is new.
yeah.
Like, I think it's so easy to say something along the lines of, oh, someone had a flash of inspiration and came up with a new thing. And there's something so romantic about that idea.
Mm,
It's so romantic. And among artists, I may be incorrect, but I believe that idea is romanticized.
hmm. That's true.
And I think that among other artists, if you look at some Michelin star restaurants, for example, it's like they take a hazelnut and they come up with 500 ways to cook that hazelnut,
Hmm.
right? And then that's permutations based creativity. And some of those ideas might be from inspiration, but it's not fundamentally like, oh, we have this incredible. It's like, we're going to try 500 different ways of cooking
Right.
this hazelnut. And it might not be as romantic, but I think the result is the same. And I think the result is of the same value.
Mm.
Right? Either way, something new was created. Either way, you, Silvan, created. Now, by the way, for those of you who are keeping score at home, Silvan now has done 2 new things, not just 1, but 2. So that's going to be, well, actually 3. So it was an interesting way of, 4. So we had string skipping, we had interesting tapping things going on, we had the use of microtones in jazz outside of a blues context, and then a technique with those microtones where you don't actually hear it because you're doing it on a regular guitar and you're bending up. So I don't know, dude. It sounds to me like you're pretty inventive and pretty creative. It might just be me sitting here,
Yeah.
but I'm like,
Yeah, no, I'm trying, and yeah, as we talk about it, yeah, I think this idea is actually romanticized, or how
yeah,
did yeah, you romanticized, um, because there's always a lot of work behind.
yep,
We might only see like the result, like oh, he came out with this new album and it's like something completely new, but we didn't see the process behind it. It might be 1 year, it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years of development into that final product, in which maybe the beginning process was something similar, like more similar to something else, and then at the end it becomes this new thing. And I think Updraft is just yeah, it's just one. I mean, it was 2 days of recordings in June 22, so that's a pretty long time ago, for a musician's perspective, because a lot has happened since, and I've developed the concepts further. And that was just yeah, a few hours of recording at on this day in 2022 summer. So yeah, I guess that's yeah, it's gonna develop even further, and I'm excited for what's next.
Speaking for myself, I'm also excited to see where you go with this next, because just listening to Updraft, there was such a unique sound and there was so much emotion.
Mm.
So much emotion. And I think that the players you picked for the album as well brought a tremendous amount of emotion too.
Mm.
Like there was some, I rarely use profanity, but I was listening to one of your tracks and the drums came in and I was like, oh, bleep, yeah. And like by myself in my apartment walking around with headphones, and it was like, it's a great album. It's a
Thank
great
you.
album.
Appreciate it.
So I think everyone should check it out. And then to give context for what's going to come next, like go listen to Updraft, then go check out your Instagram, and we can follow your evolution as an artist. And this is so cool that you're out here putting stuff out. So it's like, thank you for not just holding it inside and be like, oh no, it's not quite ready yet. Like, thank you for giving us the 1.0 or the 1.2, because like now we're going to see where it goes.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, that's maybe how we should think about these things more often. Because yeah, it's not worth it to try and make something perfect and then releasing it, because it will never be perfect. So if you think that way, you're never gonna release anything.
I mean, I've never done anything perfect. Sylvan, have you ever done anything perfect?
No.
No. And off the top of my head, thinking through every single one of the tens of thousands of music artists I've listened to in my life, none of them did anything perfect either. Come to think of it, there's about how many people? 7 billion on the planet right now, Sylvan?
Yeah, even more maybe.
Yeah, even more maybe. Do we think any one of those 7 billion has done anything perfect?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're working on a song or you're working on a piece or you've got something you're cooking on and you're like, oh no, but it's gotta be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So it's like, Silvan, I would like to introduce you to my friend. He's German. His name is Mr. Gutenauf. And to spell that one out for you guys listening at home, it's good enough. Mr. Good Enough. Because it's never going to be perfect. So we shake hands with Mr. Gutenauf. And we say, hello, Mr. Gutenauf. V Gates. Which means, how are you? And then, it's going to be what it is. And so could you talk a little bit about the process for recording the album? You said it took 2 days. Were you doing takes all the way through? Did you do any edits on it?
Yeah, so yeah, it was more like 1.5 days.
Uh-huh.
Because Jeff was arriving from Italy the same day. So he landed around noon, and then we went to sound check. And yeah, after the first day, I was like, oh shit, like, are there gonna be any takes that we can use? Like, always self-doubting. That's just how I am, or how many people are. And yeah, we did all full takes. But I did some edits in the end. For example, on on a take with a good solo, maybe the head in was a little shaky, or some things were messed up. So I just switched, like I took the head in from another take.
But big chunks is what I'm saying.
Because we were all in the same room, so you couldn't do any like, yeah.
And you guys weren't in sound booths or anything?
No, I mean we had walls in between us.
Right.
But I mean you can still hear, like, there's still crosstalk, so it wasn't possible to like overdub a new solo or anything. And I don't think that would be a good idea, because usually it ends up being less lively, even though like you want it to be perfect, but maybe the imperfections were actually the things that made it alive. I realized that in another band where we recorded recently, we had this one tune where I wasn't happy with my solo, so I did like 5 overdubs. And in the end, I still chose the first one. Yeah. So yeah, we couldn't do that, but I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah, for sure.
But
So,
yeah, big chunks. And actually, on one of the tracks, sorry,
no, go
on
ahead.
one of the tracks, I actually cut out a part of my solo because I felt like it was too long.
Huh.
So yeah, I felt like the arc wasn't
Yeah.
right.
Arc, yeah.
So yeah, I just took out like 1.5 minutes, and it's funny how these things works. It's like I found this one point on the upbeat in the middle of the bar somewhere, duck where it worked. It was kind of magical, like it was meant to be like that.
That's beautiful. Could you talk about the moments where you are deciding whether to keep a take? Because this applies to songwriting, for lines, for melodies. This applies to production, for instruments, for writing this, for everything.
Mm.
Any type of composition. So it's like, can you talk about the trade off of perfection and energy a little bit more? You mentioned it, but could you go into a little bit more about how are you making that decision? Like, are you feeling your body? Like, how is that working for you?
Yeah, I'm trying to listen to my body, like to the energy, because it's always a really hard process to choose takes, and often I'm too focused on my playing, and then I was like, oh, but there I played more virtuosic, and like I didn't this one note, and this line was clean, but then I realized, um, man, it sounds sleepy, like the band sounds sleepy, and on this other take it sounds more lively. So I guess I should choose the other take. And often what helps is showing it to other people, like to friends, with a critical ear, and yeah, they will be honest and say like, "Hey, this is not happening." I mean, you sound like maybe you think you sound better, but people are listening to the whole thing and not just to you. So it's better to choose this one where the band sounds great overall. Yeah.
Speaking of the band sounding great overall, the new album is called Updraft, available everywhere you listen to your music. Sylvan, is there anything we talked about, or excuse me, is there anything we did not talk about today that you would like to touch on?
Um. Hmm. Well, I'm not sure. Well,
Cool.
so I mean, just maybe I can talk about what I have in mind going forward with this microtonal thing.
Sure, that sounds exciting.
Um, so my goal is to write more compositions. I have this one now that I mentioned that is on my Instagram, and the goal is to write a whole set of music maybe, and to have a trumpet player. My idea is to have Peter Evans on it. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Not off
He's
the top of
this
my head.
trumpet player with absolutely crazy techniques, and he can play anything. So I think it's quite hard to probably play quarter tones in this tempo on the trumpet, but I think he could do it. Like if anyone than him. And he lives in New York, and I've met him before. Um, so I think that would be a fun collaboration if I can make that happen. But first, I need to write more music, and that's another thing I'm thinking about, like instrumentation, because there's so many albums with as a quartet with saxophone, guitar, drums, and bass. So even just changing the saxophone to a trumpet might be like a completely new flavor, and not completely new, but like something that's much less common. Um, so that will be a good idea to do that. And also, I'm thinking of combining that with live visual arts, um, which I mean I still haven't thought about it that much, and I have to meet someone who does live visual arts. So I have to find someone who would be down to do that.
Oh, I know a couple people who've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it after we're done recording.
Okay. Because there's this venue, Shapeshifter Lab in Brooklyn, and they like to have those interdisciplinary collaborations too. And they've offered me to do something there.
Cool, man. I have a question for you around the microtonal. Is your goal to have the microtonal be part of the structure of the song, so part of the through composed parts, like the head, or are you looking to also involve that in improvisation?
Both, yeah, for
Cool.
sure. Um, I mean, in the composition that I have now, that I was telling you, it's already in the melodies. But I mean, for sure, it's supposed to be in the improvisation too, as I have used it on Updraft a little bit, in some lines. But yeah, the idea behind this is, as I mentioned, is like to include it into the bebop language, and instead of maybe play
Oh, I
like,
like it.
yeah. So that's the goal for improvisation and composition both. Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's so
I don't
cool.
want to make it something completely weird, because some microtonal music is like not very appealing to the ears, where the chords are also microtonal and everything is microtonal. So that's something that is too unfamiliar to people, and I think it's too hard to find an audience for that. So I want to channel it into the familiar territory of jazz, and yeah, because I think we also have to think about who is going to be our audience, because eventually we have to make a living too. And if you make music that no one wants to listen to, it's going to be a challenge.
Okay. But within that, isn't there an argument to be made that if one was to continue making one's music exactly the way one wants to make it, eventually one would have an audience of people who are like, you know what? Yes.
Maybe, but it's just also not. Yeah, I don't want to make it
Yeah.
like weird,
Yeah.
because I want to make music that I like and enjoy.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if I enjoy this, if it's like too out there, you know. Yeah.
Well, I can say that I personally very much enjoyed the microtonal moments on the new album, which is called Updraft. And I was honestly very curious about how you made those moments happen because I was like, did he like tape extra frets at certain places? My mind was spinning because you'll see some guitarists literally take frets and like
Right.
glue them or tape them in between other frets to get those. I was like, did he like maybe just put some on and then take them off? Or anyway, so cool stuff, man. And I highly encourage everyone to check out the new album called Updraft, available everywhere you listen to music, and to find out more at silvanjoray.com. That's SILVANJORAY.com. Silvan, thank you so very much for taking time out of your touring and release schedule to come hang out with us, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.